Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Wow. Oh. Wow. Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. I'm inside the ship. I'm banging on the hull right now, Tim. This is a bizarre craft. It's so large, and I'm looking for a way to get out, and I don't see a way to get out. So I might have to do the entire show from inside this UFO that's hanging over the mountain here. This is weird. Every week I seem to get entrapped in some peculiar, some strange, otherworldly device.
You can't get out, and there's no escape, Tim.
Well, they'll keep me. If they keep me here, they have to support me. That's all I know.
Now that's it. They're gonna throw you out now.
There you go. The opening. The bottom of the craft is opening up now, and there's a big slide. So I'm gonna be coming down. Ooh. All right, enough of this craziness, or our guests will think we're just utterly mad and we don't take this seriously. And of course we do, but we like to give a little begin the evening with a little bit of entertaining. This is as close as best as it gets. That's all I know. Hey, but we
do take it seriously, Tim, but we're also utterly mad.
Absolutely. And hey, I had a maddening week. This has been a very busy week for me. Of course, this weekend here in New York, we have the Philip K. Dick Film Festival, which is kicking off, I think, actually tonight as we speak. But tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock, it will be in Soho. Everybody can get the program at philipkdickfestival.com or Google it. It's something like that. And Jacques Vallée is going to be there on Saturday, and Dr. Harold Putoff, and they're showing, 50 or 60 short films and a couple of long films, and I can't wait. It just coincides with the release of our book that we discussed last week, The Matrix Control System of Philip K. Dick, and I almost said paranoid. The paranormal synchronicities of Tim Beckley. But if you're looking for it, just type in The Matrix Control System of Philip K. Dick and forget about me for the moment until you make the checkout, I suppose, for the book.
Well, I was going to say, are you going to take? Are you going to attend some of these and take the book and maybe shill it around a little bit?
Well, yes. I can only carry 2 copies of these, or I will come out of there on a stretcher, because they're, as you know, they weigh 2 pounds, 7 ounces, and they're 440 pages. But I do have some flyers made up, and I'm looking forward to expanding my horizons. I've never really been that much sort of into science fiction per se. I mean, I've seen Star Wars and Star Trek, of course, and I was a big fan of Flash Gordon. Oh, my God.
Yeah, but I mean, admit it, that came out a long time before you were born, so,
Well, you're pushing it. No, there was a TV series that came after the cliffhangers that were in the movies, Sure. I didn't go to the
that's
Saturday.
Yeah. That's where I saw him.
Yeah. But yeah, in the movie. And of course there was another one called Flesh Gordon, but that's another story right there. And then also too last weekend, what did I do? Do you know what I did last weekend?
Well, of course, you went and partied down at the UFO hotspot in Pine Bush with their, what they call it? Was it their Flying Saucer Festival? Or
well,
something?
it was, now, to be honest with you, it's the Pine Bush Parade and Alien Festival. The parade lasted all of about maybe a big 5 minutes. Because it turns out that Pine Bush, I mean, it's been since the 1980s since I've been there. Pine Bush is a hamlet inside the town of Crawford, New York, the population being around 16 or 1700. My niece, who was navigating, had a little bit of a problem. Had a little bit. Are you playing the organ there, Tim? Had a little bit of a problem with the navigation, so it took us a little while to get there, but we finally made it. And I did post some photos on Facebook of the MIB car and some of the aliens, and me and Carol Rodriguez with our friend Mark Brinkerhoff, who's been on the program before. He's a UFO repeater. Also, too, if you want to go to Facebook, anybody wants to go to Facebook, you can find me under Tim Beckley. I posted a lost photograph, Tim.
I was going to ask you about that. Some kind of a zigzagging light over the skies of where was it? Great Britain somewhere?
Well, I was invited to speak at the House of Lords. This would have been in the I always forget the year, like the early 1980s. And after I gave me a little talk to the official UFO group, which had about 100 members, I took a train to Stonehenge and from there to Warminster. Now, at that point, there was a big UFO flap that was going on there that had extended over 10 years. This was kind of the end of the flap. The sightings started to peter out. But Arthur Shuttlewood, whose book UFO Prophecy I published here in this country, took me out to where the majority of the UFO sightings had been made over the years, which was Star Hill. Okay, now in fact, Bryce Bond, who was a disc jockey here in New York at one of the local stations, went to, I think I've told the story before, went to Warminster and ended up coming back a changed man because he claims that he walked inside of a UFO and they gave him healing powers. Anyway, it turns out there was a lady there from Scotland who had come to watch for UFOs, and along with Arthur Shuttlewood, there was a fellow by the name of Bob Strong, who was a retired RAF fighter pilot. He's now deceased. And I was trying to I did have a UFO sighting there of something in the sky where I signaled to it with a big flashlight or torchlight, and it seemed to maneuver back and forth as if it were responding to my signaling. And I tried to take a couple of photographs, but it's 10 o'clock at night, and of course it's pitch black. But I did take a photograph, and it was a slide, actually. And when the slide was developed, to the right of the woman who's totally out of focus, I'm sorry, to the left of the woman who's totally out of focus, is a zigzag line. That's the best way that I can describe it. Perforated, coming down from out of the sky and seeming to bounce around behind her in the distance. No way of telling how far away it was, but there's no homes there. There's no street lights. There's nothing that, as far as I know, that could account for it. It's totally mysterious. So at one point, I'm signaling to a UFO, and it's signaling back to me, perhaps. And when I developed this photograph here, some strange squiggly lines in the back, not totally unlike some of the other UFO photos that have been taken over, like Stephenville, Texas, and some of the other places. Now, the one I posted on Facebook is not of the best quality. Some of the color is missing. I don't know where the original slide is at the moment, because on the original slide, the zigzag line to the left of the lady is in multiple colors, and here is just a white light. And of course, the figures, like I say, are blurred because it's 10 o'clock at night. But you can find that on my Facebook page, Tim Beckley, and have a look at it and give me your opinion.
But you didn't notice that there was anything behind her when you took the initial photograph?
Absolutely, unequivocally not. Totally just the night sky. Nobody there. Like I say, no porch lights, no street lights, no low-flying aircraft. In fact, the kind of the squiggly lines are not too much different than the ones that Ellen Crystal photographed in Pine Bush that we talked about for the last 2 weeks on the show here.
Right.
But
Well, I mean, what you were, whatever it was that was flying in the background was obviously traveling pretty fast because, I mean, I don't know how long your lens was open to take that
oh,
photograph at night.
well, it was probably on automatic for the flash. I don't
Mhm.
I don't remember, but the thing is that I don't think that these are. Of course, we've talked about this. I don't think that the majority of these objects are spacecraft. This was some sort of interdimensional object. It kind of fits in with the Matrix universe of Philip K. Dick. I mean, this is like something that is traveling through some space and time through some vortex or portal or window area, and it's very strange and very peculiar. And they're certainly not from Venus. But we're going to find out tonight. Tonight we have an interesting program. We've got three guests, and we're going to be discussing, at least to what to us is a relatively new abduction experience. I came across the case while just, I guess, going through the internet, watching some stuff on YouTube, and there was a news report out of California, and it lasted for about maybe 5 minutes. Pretty detailed for a local station out there. And I said, this is something I haven't heard of. There's a number of witnesses to the case. It seems pretty well documented. So let's try to arrange a show. And so that's what we have. Tim, so why don't you take it away and tell the audience here who we have on the program this evening?
Well, thank you, Tim. Well, this is indeed a modern campfire story of alien abduction. And we're going to be talking with Mackenzie Mathis, who is the director of the documentary 101102. And this involves his uncle Ken Mathis and then Ken's friend Adolph Santistevan. And this took place in 2002 when these two gentlemen, actually it was three gentlemen, one of them has passed away since that time, who went out on a camping trip in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And so after the initial events, then Mackenzie decided that he was going to make a documentary based on these men's really unusual experience. So Mackenzie, Ken, Adolph, thank you very much for being with us tonight on Exploring the Bizarre.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello. Yeah, Mackenzie, I think we should, as the director of the film, perhaps we should start out with you. What is your, first of all, tell us a little bit about your background as a filmmaker, and also why you decided to take this case and develop it into a movie. I mean, it's not. Of course, there have been other UFO films, but it's not something that everybody runs out to do, especially about a particular, abduction experience. It's not Hollywood, it's not a Hollywood feature, but it's certainly a very well-done independent documentary. So, give us a little bit of background about your cinematography, your work in cinematography, and how you got involved in this case.
Sure. Well, so when this happened in 2002, I was actually still in film school. And I didn't really, when my uncle Ken told me about what happened, I was intrigued, but it didn't really strike me as my next project or anything like that. It wasn't until quite a bit later, probably around 2010, after I had sort of been in the industry for a while and built up my skills and my contacts, that it really sort of seemed to be something that we should pursue. Because, what stood out for me in particular about this case was the photograph of the handprint. That's something I had never seen before. And that to me is what kind of made the story stand out as more than just a case of hearsay or something like that. It's kind of easy for skeptics to write things like this off, but the physical evidence really made it just hard to ignore. So, I believe it was 2010 we started production, and I sort of did it on not at the request, but at the urging of my uncle, because, 8 years had passed by that point and nothing had happened. And it just seemed like the timing was right.
So now, Mackenzie, had you had any previous interest at all in, unusual phenomena, UFOs, things like that?
Yeah. I mean, I like anybody else, I search YouTube and sort of, look at what's out there. And I feel like there was more and more sort of coming into the public awareness as far as UFOs and alien abduction. But I still had not seen anything like this in particular. And especially when somebody close to you tells you, like I could tell by the way Adolph and Ken were telling me the story that there was no doubt in their mind about what had happened. I could tell they weren't trying to pull a fast one on me. And then as the years went by, it verified itself to me even more because, they really weren't trying to get any attention for it. They weren't really trying to make a big deal about it. And it was basically just the family and their close friends that really knew about this. Mm-hmm. So I figured, they were sort of okay with me bringing this story out into the open. And it was something that kind of just fell in my lap, and it really worked out, I think. And at this point, I'm just, wanting to get it out in front of as many eyeballs as possible because it's something that I think is, it sort of contributes to the overall sort of, the breadth of knowledge that we all have now as far as alien abductions, possible alien civilizations, visitations, stuff like that.
Well, what about your background interest in cinema photography and films and things like that? How did you first get interested in the possibility of making films?
That was, I grew up in Fresno, California, which I don't know if you're familiar with it, but when I was growing up, Fresno was kind of the butt of a lot of jokes. It's, right in the middle of California, not very exciting. It's sort of out in the middle of nowhere. And so I was kind of just looking for a way to get out of Fresno. I mean, I love Fresno. I still visit, I still have family, but for a teenager, it's not the most exciting place to be. And I had a great teacher at Fresno College, Jim Piper, who really turned me on to independent and showed me a lot of different types of movies that I never even knew existed. I never even knew that there was this whole sort of independent for not used to seeing in the theaters. And so it just really turned me on, and I just went with it. I felt like I had to pick something and just go for it. Otherwise, I'd just end up being stuck and just, not having anything to do. And movies just seemed like a way for me to, it just seemed like something that I wouldn't get bored of, something that I couldn't necessarily perfect. And it was a lot of fun. So, I started out with just a still camera, shooting 35 millimeter film, developing my eye that way. And then I went to film school, my undergrad film school at San Francisco State. And so I moved there in 2002. And that is actually kind of coincided with when this event happened to Ken and Adolph. And the first time I heard about the event was when I came back for, I think it was Thanksgiving break, was the first time that I heard the story. And I think that's the first time that seed was planted as like, okay, this could be something. Because a year after that, we sat down and we did a pretty lengthy interview, Ken and I, and my other uncle, Jonathan. And that was sort of a very small amount of that footage appears in the film that you probably wouldn't recognize, but it's at the very beginning, the very end. You see a little bit of footage from that very, very old interview.
Now, Mackenzie, what was the news program that I saw recently? Was that just aired, or was it something I picked up that had been around for a while?
That has actually not been around that long. It's probably been around for about a year. So we premiered last July in Fresno, and we did it at a historic theater called the Crest Theater And the local news sort of found out about us somehow, I think through their connections with the theater, and they reached out to me and they asked if we could, if we'd be willing to go out there again so that they could do a story on us. And
Yeah,
we thought
because
it'd be,
I was rather impressed because first of all there aren't too many news programs, 6 o'clock news or whatever, that covers the subject. And this covered it, I thought, fairly thoroughly. I mean, most things today on the news, you watch it, and if you sneeze, you're on to the next subject. And this, I guess the interview and the segment there lasted a good 4 or 5 minutes, which is in today's media almost unheard of.
Yeah. I mean, it was a great surprise, and I think the gentleman who did the story found he took an interest in us. Like and again, I think it's that picture of the handprint is what really drew him in and what really made him approach this as something that needed to be out there. Because again, if there was no kind of physical evidence at all, I don't think his bosses would have let him run a 4-minute story on the evening news. It's just
most abduction and close encounters stories seem to lack any physical evidence per se. I mean, some of them have, some of them might have some physical evidence, but the majority of them, I'm always kind of leery about the people who just remember things under hypnosis and don't really remember too much of anything without being hypnotized. But we'll get into all the details, as we proceed tonight with the conversation. And I think we're going to be, uncovering some very fertile ground here. Wouldn't you say, Tim?
Oh, definitely. And naturally, because of my background, I'm always interested in the production details of a film like this. And I mean, naturally, the details of the abduction as well is interesting. But I always like to know, like what kind of camera was used, and how it was edited and things like that. So
well, that's because you and I are old time. Film makers. I mean,
That's
we go
right.
back to making films for the last 10 years. People may recognize me, or maybe I don't want them to, as Mr. as Mr. Creepo.
The beloved Mr. Creepo.
Certainly, the very insane host of many horror films. But we're coming up on our first break, and then we'll be right back with our fascinating guest with a very interesting abduction story to follow. So stay tuned and tell your friends, or else.
Now back to exploring the bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal. Your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
And welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. Tonight we are talking about a very interesting abduction experience and the documentary that was made around it. So I want to bring Ken and Adolph into the conversation now. So gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for being with us this evening. And let me ask. I'll start with Ken, and then Adolph. I mean, you can chime in. Please do. Anytime you want during this conversation. But Ken, why don't you give us a little detail about just exactly what happened that night when it was more than just you two. There was a third gentleman who unfortunately I guess has passed away since that time. What happened that night that you guys went out camping? I mean, I know you weren't expecting what happened to you to happen. So why don't you just tell us what took place?
Sure. Let me begin with a little background here. Adolph and I have been friends since we were 13, and we're in our mid-50s now. So we go back several decades, and we have always camped, and we have fished, and we have hiked since about that time. So he and myself and some other friends have lots of experience in the mountains, lots of experience camping. We know animals from this, from that. We don't scare easily. We don't panic easily. We're what we call, I guess, experienced outdoorsmen. And Adolph and I have been doing this stuff for, close to 40 years now. And we always have the same kind of routine. We'll talk about camping. We used to go once a month for years, and we were in our 20s and 30s. And we'd always have the same kind of process where we'd get our maps out, we'd get in the phone, and we'd start talking, and we'd decide, where we were going to go. Do you want to go this place or that place? We've been up in Sierra Nevada very, very many times. We knew most of the places by heart. And in this particular case, I remember even clearly today, I said, hey, Adolph, let's go to Cartwright. It's cold, it's empty, it's remote, it's beautiful, it's high country, and that was my choice. And Adolph, even when he was younger, and I remember in junior high, he had these feelings. He had this kind of a sixth sense about him, a third eye, a different dimension connection. We probably teased about it and his events and experiences he would talk about. So I talked to him and said, let's go to Cartwright. I really want to go. And I have this huge drawing desire. I really want to go to Cartwright. And Adolph, he was like, I don't know. I have a bad feeling about this. I go, hey, you always have a bad feeling about this. And because he had the connection to things he always had, to another side or another place, if you will. And he just didn't want to go. He had this premonition it was going to be bad. As usual, whenever we would camp, I am a type A personality. I am packed. I had everything ready to go. I am just ready to roll and go to camping. I have all my boxes and gear. So, as usual, I did not sleep the night before. I'm excited to go. I have this odd sense of excitement. Like going to Disneyland, I couldn't sleep, and I don't really know why. I know more so now why, but back then I didn't know why I was so excited to go. So I'm getting there. I get there probably 10 in the morning. I leave at probably 8 in the morning. I'm way ahead of these guys, and I get there first thing by myself, and then I'm going to begin to set up camp. So I'll let Adolph kind of tell you about our conversation, about his reluctance, I guess, Adolph, to go to that place the first time.
Yeah, I did not want to go whatsoever. I had a bad feeling something was going to happen. We talked about going camping a couple of weeks before that, and I really, really did not want to go whatsoever. And down to the last day when I picked up Kenneth, the one that passed away already, when I picked him up, I go, you know what, we should go. I'll go. But I don't want to leave Ken up there by himself. So I told Kenneth, I guess I just have to face my fears. I go, something's going to happen. I don't know what it is, but I just don't feel right about going. But, I couldn't leave my friend up there. So, hey, I had to go up there.
So now, Adolph, you've had premonitions like this before in the past?
Yeah, quite a bit. And I've seen strange lights in the past also, missing time. I had another encounter before, which I call the Hensley Lake incident. And, I had several things happen. You tell people the story about it. They just look at you. Yeah, Adolph, sure. Making up a story. But when it happened at Cartwright, I'm glad there was somebody else with me, because now everybody believes my stories as to what happened all these times.
Yeah, so when we were younger, he always had stories, again, about just these lights and abductions. And he would draw these odd pictures of these strange alien-looking beings, and he would just draw these weird shapes and geometrical signs. And we just kind of thought, like he said, hey, that was Adolph. That was all through junior high and high school and through our early 20s. That day, 10/11, so I guess it would be 10/02, I get there, and I'm early, and as I've had for many, many, many years, I begin to set up my tent. I get the spot, and I'm very methodical and detail particular. And for some reason, as I'm setting my tent, and then Cartwright, back up, is at 8,000 feet. It's about the tree line. It's at the end of the road. There is no lights. There is no structures, no improvements, no cabins. It is beautiful, and it is desolate, and it is dark, and it is cold, and it's very scary. We're there. I'm in the day. It's fine. I'm unpacking everything, and I'm trying to set my tent up. And the first thing I knew that something was not normal was I had, as you hear on TV, a sense someone was looking at you. I always thought, that's just people say that and they make it up. No one's looking at you. Well, I'm in my tent, and I cannot stay in my tent for a matter of more than 20 seconds, but I have to get out because I keep feeling that there's someone going to be right outside of my tent looking at me, and so I can't stand that fear of someone staring at me. It's like I just jump out. So I put up my cot, I get my bed set up and my whatever, and I have this pressure that someone is out there. And I've never had that broad daylight, late morning, where I'm so fearful to go in my tent because I can't see around me. And I'm thinking there's someone out there or something out there, and they're just there. And I feel them. I can't see them. But I have this deep fear that I can't be in my tent because I'm vulnerable and I'm there. And the oddest thing is I heard these sounds. I remember thinking, what kind of animal makes these like kind of clicking sounds, almost Aborigine in a way. But there's nothing out there. I'm like, well, it's not a bird. It's not this. I'm going through my mind, but it's just these weird kind of clicking sounds. I'm looking, and I could not identify where in the world and what could make these sounds.
Now, what time of night is this? And is there a full moon or any moon at all? Or
no, this is like probably before noon.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'm still in the daytime.
Yeah, I'm getting my tent set up. This is probably maybe 11:30, 12 maybe at the latest.
That shows you how much I'm into camping, yeah.
It's a process. It is a long process. And I'm unpacking, and all these things are happening, and these like clicking odd sounds around me. So I go, I'm done. So I'm sitting down in front of the tent, just basically not going to move until Adolph and Kenneth get there. And they got there, I think, in the afternoon, Adolph or so, like around 2 or 3 or so on Friday.
Yeah, I got there about 3 o'clock. I worked half a day. I took half a day off, so I went home, took a shower, ate real quick. Kenneth lived right down the street from me, so I picked him up. It takes about roughly 2 hours to get there, and we passed the dam. Remember, I mean, we're at tree line, so we're pretty high up there, and it's cold. And before I got to the campsite, I had the radio on and cranked up some music so Ken could hear it from a distance that we're coming, so he could feel a little more safe. For some reason, I was thinking that. And so we drove up, we parked, and Ken, stood up. He goes, "What took you guys so long? I've been waiting for you guys." But, I worked half a day, and by the time I got ready and traveled up there. So, yeah, we got there about 3 o'clock or so.
And then usually, as we have for many years, we're glad to be there. We're happy. We're energized. We're camping. You get that natural adrenaline rush because you're in the high country and it's a weekend type thing. And as usual, Adolph starts getting his forerunner ready. And the first thing you do, those with non-campers, is you get your camp ready to get set up. You want to do that very first, not last. So Kenneth is getting his tent set up. I'm already set up. Adolph is getting his forerunner where he sleeps in the back of his forerunner set up, and we're getting our usual chores and laying the gear out and everything. And one thing you'll kind of see, which is kind of really nice, is it kind of in the film, we have original pictures from that day, from 2002, at the exact campsite. We went back to several occasions and as subsequent. But you can see exactly that day when we first got there on Friday, and there's me and Adolph, kind of sitting out there. You can see how our tents were. And I think we started, fire was going, cooking, a couple of beers, eating, the usual thing. And so now this is mid-October. So now it's getting really cold and getting really dark kind of fast at that elevation. So I'm thinking 7:30, 8:30 is coming. We're kind of just hanging out at the fire. We've done our chores, and we're kind of talking. And it's dark, and it's windy, and there's no lights out there but the fire, and there's no one there but us. And we're kind of very isolated behind a mountain. And so the first thing I remember that Friday night was we were kind of talking as usual. I said, guys, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. And I had a weird desire to go to bed. Not like that I was tired, but I really was drawn to my tent. I just, for whatever reason, I've learned now how they will control your mind and your emotions and your thoughts and lots of things mentally, remotely. I really was ready to go to bed. And I'm thinking I was probably in bed, probably 8:30 or so, I'm thinking. And then 8, I think I stayed up for a little while. I believe after that, still you and Ken stayed up for a little while after I went to bed, I believe.
Yeah, we stayed up for about an hour, not much more than that. I went inside my Forerunner first, got everything set up, blankets and everything. And Kenneth stayed up a little longer. He likes playing with the fireplace or campfire. And so he always stays up a little longer. He'll keep a blanket with him. And then he'll go to his tent, which is to the east of Ken's tent. And where I'm sleeping at, my windows are tinted. But I can still look out, see the fire, see the tents, and the way they're set up and everything. But yeah, I crashed out faster than normal. It's like somebody turning off the switch. I mean, you don't even have to get comfortable. You're just out.
And I think, and so you figure it's Friday now. It's probably 8:30, 9 o'clock. We're probably all in our tents. The fire's kind of bearing down. You're in your tent or in Forerunner, and you see these lights on the fire, and they dance. I'm not sure if you camp, but if you were a camper, you know how lights will dance from the flame. They flicker, and they just and you're kind of mesmerized by them. But the first recollection I had that something was really not right was I'm laying in my cot. I have a cot, and all of a sudden I have this unexplainable but unmistakable deep fear that somebody is outside our campground. Something is out there, and I don't know it, but I feel it and I sense it. I'm thinking to myself, stop getting paranoid. There's nothing out there. Whatever it is, explain it away. That little seed of a feeling of like, what's going on? It's not right, became worse and worse, because the next thing I know, this is what we all talked about the next day, was I'm in my tent. It's pitch black. The flame is shooting up, making marks and these weird things. And I hear someone walking. Everyone has a tarp under their tent to keep the moisture from going in their tent. And all of a sudden, I'm laying there, and I'm kind of saying like, oh, my God, there's someone walking. I hear them, their footsteps around my tent. And now I hear them walking in the campsite. And what you try to do is you try to reason, okay, is that Kenneth? Is that Adolph? Why would they be outside? It's freezing out there. There's nothing to do out there. Why are they walking around? And I'm hearing them, and I want to scream out, Adolph, Kenneth, what are you doing? Get back in. But I thought at that time, so afraid I couldn't speak. But what it is, they just tell you, don't say anything. So you don't say anything. By now, I'm completely out of my mind with fear. I'm hearing someone walking out. I'm like, oh, my God, that's Kenneth. That has to be Kenneth. Why is he out there? Why is he out there? And that was the first thing that just terrified me, was someone's out there or something's out there, and they're in our camp, and they're 2 feet from my tent. And then Adolph, he kind of heard the same thing about the same time. Go ahead, Adolph, I think.
Yeah, it was very strange. I mean, you start hearing this swishing sound. It's all around you, but yet you couldn't pinpoint exactly where it was at. There'll be a louder version of it, and you could tell it was like different layers of it, coming from different directions, different distance. It was like a swishing sound, sort of like rubbing a nylon rain jacket when you move your arms back and forth against your elbows or your forearms. It was that sound, but at different speeds, also in different distance. It was weird. I mean, it wasn't just at ground level. I mean, it was all around you. And it was really, really strange.
But Adolph, you were in a position where you were in your vehicle with windows, and but you couldn't see anything outside. You couldn't see anything outside that was making these noises through the windows of your, what'd you say, 4x4?
Yeah, I remember my windows were tinted, and I mean, you could see, where the fire's at, the tent, because it's glowing off the fireplace or the campfire. But anything beyond that, you really couldn't see because the windows were really tinted. But yeah, I mean, you could hear the sound, I mean, clear as day. I just, I was going down the list of what it may be, what's causing it. There's nobody camping around there. We're not even at a campsite. It's, just out in the boondocks. And it was just very, very strange.
And that's odd about it. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to jump in for a second here, just to sort of give people a little bit more of an accurate mental picture, because I myself was totally unaware of how remote this place actually is. Like when we finally went up there to film, then I really realized this place is completely remote. It's not, I wouldn't even call it a campsite. I mean, it's basically as far as you can go down the road, and then the road ends. And it's like there's nothing out there. There's no people and no lights or anything like that. I mean, it's completely remote. So I myself was caught off guard by that when we finally did go there to film. So I just kind of wanted to throw that in.
And when you're at that place, it's funny because I know you're thinking, well, if you look, what do you see? Because the only light you have is the fire, it's dwindling fire now. It's been on for probably, an hour and a half, whatever. You just see light, shadow, and dark, and not much light and more dark than anything. And you really can't see more than several feet past the thing. And what was odd about that swishing is we're all thinking, we found the next day, is like, we thought it was someone wearing like a suit, and you could hear him there flying or walking, like Adolph said, they're all over the place, and it's swishing and swishing. We're like, what in the, and Adolph said, we're going through our list, what in the world could make that swishing sound? As I'm listening to this, and I'm just I can't move at this particular point. The next thing I remember at some point, Adolph will talk to you more about this very commonly, is that I hear someone brush against my tent, and I jump up, and I said, Kenneth, is that you? What are you doing outside? It's freezing out there. What are you doing outside? I thought he dragged his sleeping bag across my tarp and brushed against my tent. I go, get inside, you're crazy. And I'm panicking because he's outside. I go, stop, get inside. And he goes, I'm in my, what? He goes, I'm in my tent. I'm in my tent. I'm not outside. And I realized at that point, if that's not him, I know it's not Adolph, then who is it? And I'm just going, oh my God, it's an axe murderer, it's this, and I'm just going through 1,000 things in my mind, and none of them are good, and all of them are scary, and all of them are bad, because someone's out and just brushed against my tent. And then as soon as I realized that, I jumped up, I laid back down, and I went to sleep. And one thing we talked about was it was like they were turning you on and off like a switch, up, down, on, off, up, down, on, off, at will. I remember I popped up, and that would probably say 10:30 at night, and I look up, and I'll never forget, it's in the film, Mackenzie did a good job of it. In the right-hand side of my tent, I see swirling lights. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a flashlight. It's an axe murderer in a flashlight, and he's swirling around my tent to freak me out. I'm like, wait a minute, there's no one here. So I'm trying to look at where the lights come from, and they're the oddest, strangest, bluish color I've ever seen. I've never seen them since. And they're in my tent, and they're swirling, and I'm trying to figure out where in the world are those lights coming from, and who is shining them, and where are they, and why are they here, and what are they going to do to me? And I'll let Adolph kind of tell you about how you kind of go in and out throughout the entire night, Adolph.
Yeah, during that time, Ken was seeing that light behind his tent. I got up, or I sat up, because I seen that light through the back window, and that's what made me sit up and look at it. The light was behind his tent, and it was sort of like a glacier white, bright light, and it was sort of like swirling around, not in any given pattern. It was weird. I could see Ken sitting in the tent, sitting on his cot, and with I think it was the axe that he had in his hand that I could see his whole silhouette on there. And during this time, he can't see me, but I could see what's going on also. And it was just weird. I couldn't figure out where this light was coming from. I kept looking at it. I was getting kind of panicky. And next thing I know, I fell asleep.
I remember I investigated a case, quite a number of years ago in Oregon, where lights were seen outside of an individual's home, and they were seen like crawling across the lawn, and then before you knew it, they had invaded their home and were being seen on the ceiling and the wall and so forth. But it wasn't like a projection of a light where you have a beam or something like that. It was just
Right.
the light all by it, itself. So you couldn't tell where in the heck the source was. Anyway, we're coming up on our first break here, and we've covered some very fascinating ground. I mean, this has to rank as one of the top experiences of this type, and I know there are many more details to come, and I'm anxious, of course, to hear about the handprint, or whatever you want to call it, the alien print on the hood of the car. So we'll be back after our little break here, and stay tuned and tell your friends to tune into KCORradio.com.
Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe, exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Welcome back to the second hour of Exploring the Bizarre, and tonight we are talking about the documentary 10/11/02. And Tim, I know, listening to the story that Ken and Adolph are telling us, there's details in their story that if someone isn't familiar with the whole abduction scenario, just wouldn't sound familiar. But a lot of things that they're saying, I've heard time and time again with other people who have had similar experiences.
Well, what I wanted to ask Ken, if we were looking at a map, what would be the closest towns to where you were camping out?
Sure. If you can picture California, and then in California, pretty much dead center, which is Fresno, California, which is pretty much basically dead center. And if you will go almost directly east, about 80 miles or so, now you're going towards Nevada, right at the peak of the Sierra Nevada range is Cartwright. So it's pretty much dead center California, way up in the Sierra Nevada range, up towards the crest, about 80 miles east of Fresno and Clovis.
Okay, if you go on Google, zoom down on it, and past the dam, and go around the bend, it'll be going north, and the second set of trees. That's the area we were camping at. You can zoom down on it.
Now, Mackenzie, did you try to find other witnesses to this? I mean, have you come across anybody else who might have had similar sightings or experiences in that area?
I have not actually. When we were up there doing the news report about a year ago, we did run into a local guy who was kind of driving around up there, and he didn't say he had any experiences per se, but when we told him about what we were doing, he was not surprised at all to hear about it. He said there's, he's heard of not, particularly alien abduction things happening up there, but it is a weird place. I mean, it's got kind of a weird vibe about it. And I know that when they were up there, especially in October, because we went out there to film the news story in late spring, and even then it was cold up there. It was cold. So in October, oh man, it's freezing. And so I know that, there were probably no other humans for several miles in any direction when this happened in 2002.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get back to the story. So you see these lights, and you don't know exactly where they're coming from. What is the next part of the story? I mean, what takes place next?
Okay, I'll take it from there, Tim. Okay, as I was sitting in the back of the Forerunner, I seen these lights behind Tim's tent, and sort of like a swirling type, great glacier blue color, sort of. And I'm sitting looking at it, trying to figure out, okay, nobody's camped behind us, nowhere near us. Where are these lights coming from? And then as the light starts getting closer, I started noticing there was a shadow on there. And I kept looking at it, and it kept getting bigger and bigger, little by little. I just kept analyzing, trying to figure out, what the blanket was that was moving. I thought it was branches, that there's a breeze up there, but there was no breeze. And I thought for a second there it was branches in front of a light source, whatever it may be. And it was making a shadow on his tent. And at the same time, I could see Ken sitting in there. And then as his light started getting closer to his tent, I started seeing a shadow of a small person walking toward the tent. And I'm looking at it like, whoa, what's that? And it was an alien type person. I could see the silhouette right through the tent, just like the way I could see Ken. It was behind him, and I could see Ken sitting there like he was paralyzed. He wasn't moving whatsoever. And I'm looking at it like, what the? Next thing I know, I fell asleep. I mean, why would I fall asleep at that moment, being all excited, trying to figure out what it is, and then all of a sudden I'm out. I just knocked out. Somebody turning off a switch.
Now, when you say alien type creature, I mean, give us a description.
Okay, it was probably about 4'8". I could just see the silhouette of a body. I didn't see no, like a jacket over this person or anything. It was just a smooth body behind the tent, the silhouette of a little creature type thing. And it wasn't walking in a straight line. It was sort of like wobbling side to side a little bit, like it had a hard time walking. But of course, there was dust, needles, branches behind the tent, anywhere around there. Maybe it was having a hard time walking through it or couldn't see or what, but that light was behind that object walking toward the tent. So as it started getting closer, I could see the silhouette of the body getting closer to the tent.
What's kind of odd is that because we kind of try to put pieces together, and we're trying to kind of I guess correlate timelines, and I remember he kind of mentioned that, but it's all after I would say it's like a big jumble. It's like you're in between either you're semi-conscious, but you're awake, but you're dreaming, but you're not, and so you're in this really weird place of reality and bits and pieces of sub-reality and of dreams and of this bizarre world. And I think when Adolph had seen that light behind the tent, going back to earlier, had they kind of put you to sleep. I remember I was down, not asleep, but I was down, and I just burst up out of my cot and sit up, and I screaming, "Oh my God, the forest is on fire! The forest is on fire! We lit the forest on fire! We got to put the forest out! Oh my God, we lit the forest! The fire jumped the tent, and it caught the forest on fire!" And I'm jumping up, and I'm just panicking because behind my tent, all I see is orange, is glowing light. And I'm thinking that the spark jumped out of our fire and caught the whole complete forest on fire. And I'm yelling and I'm screaming. I remember Ken said, "What's the matter? What is the matter?" And I'm looking, and I want to just do something more because I'm thinking, "Oh my God, we got to do something about this fire." And I go, "Oh, no, nothing. Don't worry about it." And I lay back down and I went to bed. And we're not really sure if that was before the white light or after in terms of our timeline, because it's sort of hard to get a sense of early and late and before and after. But I did jump up with that particular sense. And throughout the night, it was the same thing, literally for hour after hour after hour. We were sitting there, and you're just holding on to your tent. You're not sleeping, and we're all thinking the same thing. God, please, someone get up. Someone get up. I need to hear a human being because no one is making a sound. And you feel completely alone, totally isolated, and there's beings walking around outside, and you're powerless. You can't say anything. You can't do anything. You just sit there, and you're just frozen with fear, and you want someone to just utter a word of humanity, and it'll kind of break the spell. And I remember sitting there.
How about best way to describe it is a deer that's hiding behind some buckbrush or some type of shrub that's laying there, doesn't want to be seen, but its eyes are bugged out so big, and our ears are just analyzing every single sound there is, trying to justify what that sound is. And our eyes were so bugged out, trying to figure out, and so scared. And it was weird because you're up, and then all of a sudden you're knocked out again. You're not truly awake, you're not truly asleep when that point comes, but when you knock out, and without even trying to go to sleep. It's like a roller coaster ride, best way to describe it also. You're up, wide awake, all of a sudden you're out. It was just a roller coaster ride, being awake, being asleep.
When you're awake, it was just pure terror because you're awake. There's someone out in your tent. You can't see him. It's pitch black. There's someone walking. And we all remember the next day when we woke up. I'm thinking now we're like maybe it's like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. It's going on now for hours upon hours upon hours. The same thing as they have described. And he's right. You're frozen, trying to analyze every little breaking twig, every little stick to say, okay, it's a rodent. Oh, it's not a possum. At one point, I hear them, and I'm like clinking, and they're going through our camping gear. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going through I could hear the coffee pot and the cups, and they're clinking and going through our ice chests. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going through they're gonna come get me right now because they're out there and they're going through our stuff. And they're opening our containers, and we're freaking out. The last thing I remember when they left is I'm laying in my tent, and all of a sudden I hear a very distinct, like a zzz, zzz, zzz. And I'm like, oh my God, they just stole my CD out of my CD player. They opened my CD in my truck, and I'm hearing this distinct sound of this CD you hear when it's loaded and unloaded and loaded. And I'm like, oh my God, they're stealing my CD. I got to get my CD because someone's stealing my CD. And you're making no sense to yourself. And who's out there stealing your CD in the middle of freaking nowhere? It's pitch black. It's 20 degrees. Who would steal your CD? But you hear these sounds, and you can't make sense of them, and you can't explain them away because how to explain aliens in your campsite in the middle of nowhere going through your stuff rationally? You just really have a...
we had that mechanical sound, just like Ken said, sort of like a CD being pulled out. And for the food and all our material we had on the table and laying on the ground on top of the ice chest, it's not if a bear went in there and started disturbing everything. Nothing was opened per se, like or bread, or nothing was ripped open. If something wanted to eat it, they left the ice chest top open, but nothing was turned upside down. It was like being placed back on the ground. It wasn't disturbed like if it was an animal trying to eat something.
Right.
That's what we were trying to analyze. Like, well, it couldn't be a bear, it couldn't be a raccoon. They would have ripped stuff off, trying to eat something. So it wasn't an animal that was, trying to eat something.
Now you say that okay, so you were awake part of the time and you were sleeping a part of the time. Now,
Yeah.
did you get abducted? I mean, were you? Do you think you were taken on board the ship, or is this just I was going to say down to earth encounter?
No, what's funny because
okay. You want to take it, Tim?
Yeah. So this is Friday, so this is night one, and I'm gonna think this. And I discuss it's just basically the same thing until probably about 4 a.m. So we're Saturday morning. It's about 4 a.m. All of a sudden they leave, and now it's Saturday morning. It's early, but it's dark, and all of a sudden you just feel them go. You don't hear them fly away. You don't hear them walk away. All of a sudden, that total fear that they bring with them goes, and you feel it. And
now you say when you so there was more than one, for lack of a better name, individual or a person, or yeah.
There's probably a handful, whatever that means. Mm-hmm. So Saturday morning comes. Finally, they go. The sun finally gets up. I feel better. I think I was the first one to get out of my tent, and I'll let Adolph finish up after the sun comes up Saturday morning.
Yeah, Kim got up as usual. He'll make coffee, and I seen him get up. I opened up the side of the Forerunner. I looked at him. I go, God, I'm so happy to see the sun. I mean, the sun was so. We were just so happy that the sun came up. You feel safe. There was no fear no more. It was like lifting a veil off your head. Just a sign of relief, big time. What's weird is that we talked about it just for a short moment. What happened last night, we couldn't figure it out. Then all of a sudden, boom, we stopped talking about it. We went fishing. It was cold. We fished right by the dam. But what was strange, we didn't talk about it whatsoever. We're sort of like in a numb position, you could say. Like we don't supposed to talk about it. But where it starts getting a lot weird is later on Saturday evening, and that's when the story starts coming up. And also, when we did the movie 10/11/02, me and Ken got interviewed separate, and Kenzie asked the questions. So we never knew what the questions were when we were being interviewed.
Also, you were given a lie detector test as well, correct?
Yes. So what we did, it was like 2 movies. My version of what I remember, because some of the times I was asleep, some of the time Ken was asleep, and I was awake when he was asleep. So it's like 2 movies being put into one. And we didn't see the final results till it was completely done, which Kenzie did a great job on that. So it's 2 stories in one put together, and everything matches up perfectly as to what happened.
And by Saturday, like Adolph said, people would ask us, why in the world did you guys stay another night? And it's weird because after in the morning, like Adolph said, we just like looked at each other like, what in the world was that? We're kind of joking about it. It was this and aliens, and we kind of figured, it was aliens. But we went about our business, and the whole day we didn't really talk about it. And so this is Saturday afternoon. We're doing our usual stuff. We go hiking, exploring, and fishing. Same thing 30 years. Now the sun's going down, and now it's getting cold, and now it's getting dark. And now it's all, at least to me, it's all coming back. That total fear of helplessness, of absolute terror is coming back. And I'm like, oh, God, No, not again. No way. No way. No way. This can't happen. This cannot happen twice. There is no way. The second night, to answer your earlier question, is when I absolutely got abducted. That was the first time I've been abducted, and I absolutely knew I was abducted because I remember the fact that I remember when they came and got me. I remember holding on to my cot, trying to be pulled out. I remember laying in a metal table in a dark place, in a fetal position, naked, crying. I don't want to be here. Let me go. I don't want to be here. You let me go. Just crying to let me go. Please let me go. Let me go. And I'm just a bawl. And someone comforts me and says, "It's okay. We're not going to hurt you." The next thing I know, this was like 5 hours later, on Sunday morning, I jump out of my bed. I go, "Oh my God! They just put me back in." And I'm looking at my tent. It's right from my head, 3-4 feet. And I go, and he's right there. I could feel him. I could smell him. And he's at arm's length outside of my tent looking at me. I'm looking at him. I can't see because my eyes aren't working. But I know he just dropped me off. He's right there. And he goes. And that was my Saturday. I'll let Adolph tell a little bit more about that on Saturday as well.
Okay, before that happened to Ken, he went to sleep early as usual, and me and Kenneth, stayed up. Ken likes, in charge of the fire, so that was his job. So he put on some wood in there, and it was pretty cold, but I wanted to see the glacier at the other end, because it was still sort of like you can still kind of see this glacier that used to be there. It's getting smaller every year. We went out on the road, and on the other side of the road, there's a sort of like a steep incline going down. So, and I took my big flashlight. So, I'm showing Kenneth, there used to be a big glacier there years ago, and it's getting smaller and smaller. You could sort of like faint see it. And I had my big flashlight with me. And then all of a sudden, we started seeing this light about 4 or 5 miles away coming toward us. And we're looking at it. I go, there's no sound whatsoever. So we kept looking at it, and it started getting close to us, and it started going up and down of the ridges of the mountain. So you'll see it for a second, and then go back down. See it for a second, come back down. So I got my flashlight as it started coming toward us, and it's probably, at this point, probably about 3 miles away. So I got my flashlight, I pointed at it, and I did 3 signals, quick on and off. And it started seemed like it started coming a little faster toward us. So I'm doing that and then pointing it toward Ken's tent, like, don't look at me, look at him, joking around. And then as it started getting closer, then I realized for sure it was a no helicopter. Why is it at this, this elevation? So I flicked at it a couple more times toward his tent. And then all of a sudden I seen a beam of light come down. And me and Kenneth looked at each other like, that's not no helicopter. So we stood there looking at it for a few seconds, and I go, get this, let's go back to the campsite. And as we're walking, I turned around, and I could see this light. You could see the shape of it. It was just a light. And as it was coming toward us, and then all of a sudden it made its right. There's a big granite dome. It went behind it. And I was looking at it. It just went behind it, couldn't see it anymore. We went back to the campsite, which is only about 150 feet, the very most. And also, we stopped talking about it. For some reason, after seeing that, why would we stop talking about it? It was like, get it out of your mind, don't talk about it. Discuss of what just happened. This big blank. You just go like, oh, okay, let's talk about this. So, Kenneth put some more put in the fire and everything, and we just stayed up a little longer. I went to bed. Kenneth was always the last one to go to sleep, and so I crashed out. And then later on, that's when I seen the light behind Ken's tent, and that's when I crashed out for some reason. And then later on during that night, I heard Kenneth get up. It's like I hear a zipper off his tent. And I'm looking at him through the back window, because the back window was a tent beside him. And so I'm looking at him, and all of a sudden he picks up a piece of log, and probably about 2.5 feet long by inches wide.
All right, Adolph, I'm gonna have to interrupt you here because it's time for us to go to our bottom of the hour break. But hold that thought, and we will continue this conversation when we come back on Exploring the Bizarre.
Now back to Exploring the Bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal, your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. And Tim, wouldn't you know it, here we are with less than a half hour to go in the show, and I want to hear more about this story. This is fascinating.
Yeah, and in the essence of time, I want to kind of fast forward after I would have through my abduction, Adolph and Kenneth saw the lights and all the things that we did for that one more horror night. Same thing, different night. Don't know why we stayed. We couldn't leave. Lights up, down, paranoia. Adolph seeing things, feeling his car move, and all of these things that happened. The next morning, Sunday morning, I opened my eyes and I said, "That's it. I'm done. I've got to go. I have got to get out of here." I go. I wake up. I start throwing my stuff in the back of my truck. I tear apart my tent. I throw it in a big ball. And Adolph knows will say, "I'm extremely structured and everything's in a container and placed in this place." I throw in my stuff and I don't care. I just have to leave. I tell you, look, I gotta go. They're like, "Whoa, what's going on?" I'm going. So I'm throwing my gear in the thing. I'm saying my goodbyes. I'm 2 hours from home, and I take off out of there, and I'm going home. This is Sunday morning, about 9 o'clock. I get home. The further I get, I feel this feeling of euphoria, utopia. I go from paranoia and just getting out into like this really warm, odd feeling of joy. Don't know where it came from. Well, I know now, like where they kind of will come in and do some things on you to make sure you're not all cracked up forever. And I'm going home and I'm unpacking my gear. I'm in Clovis. I'm talking to my wife at the time, and everyone's, "Oh my God, this trip!" And I'm kind of going on. Then all of a sudden, I get a call from Adolph. And Adolph says, "Ken, are you home?" "Yeah." He goes, "Stay there. Don't leave." Go ahead, Adolph.
He said, "Oh, that's what you do. You hide in the shadows." And I'm looking at him like, why in the hell would anybody say that? You know, he doesn't know I'm awake, looking at him. Also, he starts walking parallel, going toward the front of the vehicle, and I'm looking at him like, where's he walking to? You know, there's no flashlight, and there's only light off the fire, campfire. And then next I know, I fell asleep. So in the morning, once he woke up, I go, "Where did you go last time?" When he said, "Oh, that's what you do. You hide in the shadows." He goes, "I see a little creature hide behind the tree." I go, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, because I want to go see what it was." What was it? I mean, that was eerie. And that was after Ken left. And so I told Kenneth, "You know what? Let's go. We're out of here."
Well, we're breaking up here a little. Ken, how did the handprint come about?
Yeah, Adolph is hard to hear. So what Adolph was going to say was that night he remembers someone leaning against his vehicle, but he didn't think anything about it. It didn't make any sense to him at all until the next day when he saw the hand. So he and Kenneth are packing, and he always checks in his vehicle his oil, and he's very conscientious in his water, and it's good. So he lifts up the hood on his Toyota, and he sees this handprint. He says, "Kenneth, did you do that? Did you make that handprint?" He goes, "Look at that." He's looking at it basically and says, like, "How did you make that? How could you do that?" He's like, "I didn't make any handprint." No, I didn't. They're looking at it, and they're like, that's not human. What is that? Got fingers, a odd-looking appendage / thumb from way down from the wrist. They have no idea what it is, but the whole weekend's making sense now. He gets in the car. He calls me. I got sent back to where I was and said, "Are you home?" I go, "Yeah, I'm home." He goes, "Don't leave. I'm coming. Just stay there." I'm like, "Oh, God, now what happened?" He gets there. He pulls up, and we're just talking, and all of a sudden he goes, "Let me show you something." And he shows you the hood, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, "What the hell is that?" There's a very fine layer of dust because of the very high, cold, dry altitude across everything. And you can see clearly, and it's very clearly in the documentary and very clearly, etc., this handprint, it is not human, it is not an animal, it is a handprint clear as a bell. Odd about this handprint, so we're looking at it at my house, I'm getting my camera, taking pictures of it, all of a sudden I look at it, I'm thinking, wait a minute, it's got 4 fingers, and it's got a thumb, but the thumb goes from basically where your wrist is, and it's a big, long-looking, freaky-looking thumb.
I was going to say, the hand, if you put your hand on top of it, would it be much bigger than your hand?
Not much. Not much, but longer and more narrow. And it had a hollow palm. If you look at it, it's kind of, say, without the pictures in the hand, you'll notice it, and you're like, it's humanoid, but it's not a human hand. It's not a orangutan, and it's not anything. It's just an alien hand.
Looks pretty strange.
Absolutely strange.
We'll have that up on we'll have that up on our YouTube page. With the audio. But yeah, it does not look like. Now, is there there's more than one imprint?
Yes, there is. Yeah, we have several angles of the hand. What's odd about the hand is one picture shows is you can see we're trying to duplicate the handprint on the hood, and our hands with oils will absorb the dust. It's now you can see where our hand has left a negative, if you will, impression. The alien left a positive impression where the dust coagulated under its touch, and you have this weird, rough, powdery thing from where they touched the hood. It's very distinct, as you can see, and very clear. And we were looking at it, and we're freaking out because that is an alien handprint if you've ever seen one. I'm looking at it. We take pictures of it. It doesn't make any sense. We go about our business. Everything is fine. Fast forward 2 weeks later, Adolph calls me up and says, guess what? The handprint is back. I go, what do you mean the handprint is back? He goes, there's another handprint. I go, no way. So now he comes back, he washed the vehicle, he tried to wax it, he wanted the handprint gone, and a different handprint reappears. There's a
different handprint. Different handprint?
Yes, different. Different location on the hood and a different type, if you will, of alien handprint.
So, I mean, does this mean that this thing or these things are following you?
No. What it meant was, they've followed me ever since now, sadly. What it meant was, we didn't even see the first one. It was covered in the powder and the dust or whatever. We didn't see it. When he washed the vehicle and when he tried to wax it, it appeared on the front of the hood and not the back of the hood, like the first one that we saw on Sunday by the driver's side door. Now we have 2 alien hands. We call one the blue hand, one the red hand, and we study them for weeks and we blow it up, and you can see the clear suction cups on the tips, the round pads, all the things you hear about on TV. The difference is they don't have 3 fingers, they have 4 fingers just like we do, and a thumb, if you will. Unlike ours, they have, again, round pads. If you open your hand wide, we have a V between our fingers, they have a square between their fingers. Their fingers, we have joints, so our fingers won't go left to right, if you will, because they have our finger joints. They're like pipe cleaners. They bend all over the weird place. They really bend. One of the questions we have is, what will the aliens need? What purpose would a thumb that far apart from the other thumbs, you have 2 hands on the table, what would it serve? Do they evolve with that? Do they have these massive keyboards they operate and they need those thumbs so far apart? Do they climb on things? It's just an amazing discussion that we've had about that hand and its design and its purpose and its function. And it's just extremely odd. Anyone who's seen that hand has never, ever said, you made that. They've always said, holy crap, where'd it come from? What is that? You can absolutely tell it is a handprint of an alien. It has a hollow palm, a very skinny wrist, and narrow, long fingers with pads and suction cups on the end of them.
Well, it's one of the strangest things that I've seen. I do remember years ago seeing where there were like little ghostly hands that were left on the back of a car. Supposedly, some children were pushing a car over a railroad track that had been, killed when the locomotive come and crushed I think the school bus they were on or something like that. That's the closest thing that I can, relate to. But this is totally, bizarre and strange. You say though that you have had other experiences.
Yes. Sadly, the things you read are true. What happened is Ed's been abducted and is alien since he was 5, since he was a very little kid. I was never abducted, as far as I remember, until 10/11/02. And now I get visits probably 6 times a year, every 2 months or so. They will miss time, they will come, they will scare me, they will move things, they will make noises, they will do all kinds of things, and they will just scare the living heck out of me.
Now, have they revealed anything to you? I mean, have they had some telepathic conversation
very
or
much
dialogue?
Oh, absolutely. They speak very clearly telepathically, and it's odd because when they talk to you, you don't have any choice but to do. You don't reason, you don't argue. You just do. They have. Since this time, they have visited my ex-wife many times, my son, some of my friends, girlfriends over the years. They have left marks. I have lots of documents and lots of pictures. They have never left me alone since 2002.
Now, but what kind of pictures exactly?
Oh, for example, I have a picture my girlfriend had when they first got her. She said she had a weird dream that someone was in her apartment, and she woke up, and inside of her leg, by where her ovaries would be, there's these 3 perfect red pinpoint marks that form a triangle, and the points are exactly 2.75 millimeters apart. It's a perfect equilateral triangle. I have odd-looking things on my hand, for example, like a burn that are circular in nature with like little dots on them, bruises that you can't explain that just come when you wake up. But you always remember all the little processes: first the lights, then first the fear, then the lights, then the missing time. They wake up, and then you have all little weird things on you.
And also the rash that I got on my leg, which I can't get rid of since then.
You can't get rid of the rash.
A rash that I got on my leg. And constantly be putting medicine on it. I went to the doctor or to the hospital. They kept me in there for 2.5 days.
Well, now I want to ask Mackenzie. I want to bring Mackenzie back into the conversation here. Did you arrange for the lie detector test to be given?
I did. It was actually, I believe it was either Ken's or Adolph's idea initially, but I'm the one who, actually researched it and figured out how to actually make that happen for the film.
And who did the testing, and what were the results? And tell us some of the questions that were asked.
Sure. So the gentleman's name is Larry DiPaola. He runs a company called Modern Polygraph. He's based here in the Bay Area in California. And so basically the process was he came in. We rented an office space for this, and he had his equipment. It basically involved a laptop computer and some various sensors and measurement devices that he hooked up to Ken and Adolph to measure their heart rate and things like that. And then he sat him down at a table. He asked them a few kind of questions to just establish a baseline, and then he kind of just went into it. And he asked me initially what I wanted to get out of this session. So what are the main questions that we're trying to explore here? And, how are we going to sort of fit this into how are we going to structure these questions? And so I told him the main thing I wanted to know is, we want to establish whether they're being truthful or not when they say they did not make the handprint, that they found the handprint on the car and it was not fabricated. And another thing was just the overall veracity of what they were saying about the camping trip itself. So we wanted to establish whether there was any doubt whether any of the stuff that they're saying is exaggerated or simply untrue. And so he did separate sessions for Ken and Adolph. And I don't know if I want to go into the very minute details of it because it's in the film.
All
and
right.
There's actually a bonus
Absolutely.
feature of the film. The bonus feature in the film encompasses it's like a 10-minute scene of just the polygraph. So
Right.
it's all available to watch online.
And we do have a question here. Rap podcast, did he go to see a medical professional for the wounds?
Yeah, I went to the hospital. They said I had an infection on the skin, but they took samples of it. They kept me in there for 2.5 days. Kept giving me antibiotics, and what they figured out it was a radiation burn. And they asked me if I was around for radiation. I go, no. I go, I went to a camping trip, and the end result, I got this rash on my leg, and I still got it out of all these years.
Well, we've seen, of course, photographs over the years of other people who have, had close encounters, and of course, Tim, was it the case there in Texas, the Cash Landrum case where the
yes,
one lady actually lost, I think, her hair, and they had markings of some kind. I don't know whether they were burn marks or what on their skin. And then I was just watching a series that's just up on Netflix. It's a Canadian series, sort of like Unsolved Mysteries. It's called Portal, and they had Stephen Mekulich, and I know I'm destroying the last name. The Polish fellow who had the close encounter, and he went to the hospital, and he had these squares that were embedded in his chest. It looked like he almost was put under a waffle maker.
Yeah.
That's about the best way. Yeah.
He was hit by a heat blast from the UFO. I mean, he was like right up next to it, had put his hand on it. And when it flew away, it blasted hot air from like a grid system that was on it. And it burned his shirt completely off. And then left him with those burn marks.
He was on the program. They have some of the original footage, and they also, I was very impressed. They interviewed his son. I mean, so it's a well-known case, and in fact, the whole series revolves around. I guess it's filmed in Canada, so most of the episodes involve things that took place, north of the border.
Also,
Go ahead.
when they took blood tests from me, when the doctor came in, he said he's never seen blood like this before. I go, what are you talking about? He said he ended up seeing blue and green hairs in the blood.
Blue and green hair.
Yeah, he said long strings of sort of like small hairs, green and blue. He's never seen that before in anybody's blood.
Well, I don't think anybody's seen that before, I would say.
That sounds familiar to me, though.
That.
What were you saying, Tim?
I was just saying that sounds familiar to me, though.
Yeah, it was very strange. I got kind of scared, like, okay, what did they put in me? I didn't tell the doctor that. I had that result before, because they took blood before when I got sick and all that. And it was the first time, he came in total time. And he told me, you have the blue and green hairs in your blood. We don't know what it is.
Have you been sick? I mean, do you feel like you've had the flu over the years, or is there some some medical problem that you've been existing with since the encounter?
Well, right after that, I started having symptoms of Parkinson's. So I ended up being on disability for years. Medication for that. I had a hard time walking, stuttering, and then eventually it should have gotten worse as the years go by, but I ended up getting better.
Yeah. We've come down to the last couple of minutes of the show, and it's been a totally fascinating and engrossing evening. I do want to give Mackenzie, who is the producer of the film 10/11/02, which is based, if you're wondering what that represents, it's the date of the encounter or the experience. Mackenzie, where can people find the streaming version? Can they buy a DVD on this, or is it on Netflix or somewhere?
So right now it's streaming on Vimeo On Demand and also VHX, which are both streaming platforms. In about a week, we are going to be on YouTube. So that's sort of what I've been looking forward to, because that's going to make it a lot easier for people to access it. But right now, I think the easiest way to find the film is just go to my website, MackenzieMathis.com, and on the front page, just click on 101102, and then there's a bunch of links to watch it directly right there.
Well, it's got to rate as one of the top. Tim, wouldn't you say UFO experiences of the last decade or so? I mean, it's just a utterly fascinating story with a lot of elements to it and evidence. I mean, a lot of these stories people tell their experiences, and that's fine, but they don't have handprints on the car, and they haven't had the opportunity to pass a lie detector test. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for being with us this evening, Mackenzie and Ken and Adolph, and of course you, Tim Schwartz, there in Jasper, Indiana. And don't forget, this weekend is the Philip K. Dick Film Festival here in New York. I'll be down there maybe for a part of the event, and hopefully we'll see you there. And we'll be back on the air, of course, next week. And in the meantime, check out our YouTube page, Mr. UFO Secret Files. And good night, all. And thank you again very much for a fascinating show.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Schwartz. They're taking back the night by jetting non-stop across the cosmos in search of the truly bizarre and totally unexplained, with you as their co-pilot. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on Exploring the Bizarre and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Schwartz, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. Follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100. Exploring the Bizarre.